And these departments are getting, I guess, caps. Cap in terms of a limit or an upper bound to how much they can increase their spending.
Mm-hmm.
Some departments are getting stricter caps than others, or are getting less room to grow. The police are getting a 2% cap, and there's a lot of hoopla.
So then that means basically, so they have a budget of, say, whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the amount is, and they can't go over. So if they have overages, it's capped at 2%, and after that they're hooped, right? They got to just deal with it. On their end, right? So they don't have an unlimited cap anymore. Where if there happens to be, like this year, a record number, or it's tied for the record number of homicides, they can't continue going over and over. They're going to have to, inside the police organization, make cuts somewhere else or divvy up. However they do it, whatever, right?
Yeah, and last year they had a budget of $301.4 million. In 2019, that was 2009, that was $179 million. So there's been a number of years where that budget has gotten well above inflation growth.
Mm-hmm.
And also the police share of the budget, of the city's total budget back in 2009, was 22.7%, and now it's gone up to 26.8%.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a growing share.
Yeah, the graph here is going upwards, and doesn't look like it's going down anytime soon, right? So I guess, I don't know when the police bargaining their contract, or I know that they have like a bargaining agreement with the city.
Yeah, their last one was, I think, in 2017.
And when, do you know how long it is till the next?
I'm not sure. I
imagine that whenever the next bargaining agreement occurs, there will be some significant changes in that, I imagine. For instance, I believe Winnipeg is the only police service that I know of that has their overtime counts towards their pension. So they have a pensionable overtime, which costs a lot of money. I can see that being taken away.
Yeah, and that's the argument that some in the police service are giving for why they need more than 2%. We can't work with... we need much more than 2% because to increase officers, we need a lot more because of pensionable overtime.
Yeah. Which, it pads their pension, right? So, and when you go overtime, they're getting paid at least double time. So whatever they make, I don't know what they make in a year, but it's double that. So it's double, and when they're working overtime, so that's a big significant. You start adding up hours and hours and hours. That's a big amount of money, right?
Yeah. I think even in the status quo scenario, still have pensionable overtime. We want to, let's say, keep the police, the number of officers constant or increase it slightly. I think that there is still room to do that with the 2% cap. So, let's say you take as a given, okay, for at least the next little while, we're going to have contracts where overtime is pensionable. And we also want a constant number of police officers or slightly more. I think you can still do that with the 2% limit to spending increases, because I think there are some items in the police's capital budget, particularly the helicopter, that you can...
Oh, how much does a helicopter cost? Like, we have the helicopter, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what's the maintenance or the what goes on into, like, I guess, running that per year?
Yeah.
I guess you'd have to figure that out.
Yeah, I think there might be some...
I'm sure it's not cheap.
Yeah, I don't think it's cheap. I know that there was talk about getting a second helicopter, which I don't think is the best use of resources. I think we could get some money from selling the helicopter and recycle that back into the police budget, if you're so inclined. And I think there might be other heavy vehicles that we might be able to economize on, even if we, again, take as a given that we want the same or slightly more officers, and we're keeping the pensionable overtime constraint. But there's a lot of other budgets that are facing some tough caps, and transit is one of them. I know, Willie, you were talking about how useful you think late night transit would be, especially for bars and pubs.
Yeah, I always found it kind of weird in this city, and it's always been, as far as I know, that transit shuts down at 1 o'clock. Yet the bars shut down, obviously, at about 2, sometimes 3 o'clock, depending on time of year and stuff like that. But yeah, everybody always says, "Oh, if you don't drink and drive, take the bus, transit and stuff like that." Well, that's not an option, really, because at 1 o'clock in the morning, when you're drinking, you don't think, "Oh, I want to leave here while I'm having fun so I can catch the last bus home," right? You're gonna most times you're staying to the end of the bar if you're having a good time and stuff like that, right?
Okay, so yes, that makes sense. Now, one of Transit's suggestions for how they could meet the spending limits is going in the wrong direction, which is, okay, buses end shortly after 1 o'clock, or a bit after 1 o'clock. Instead, let's cut them back so that they stop going a bit after midnight. And that's really a wrong way to go for the needs of the city, in my opinion. I think we have this beautiful plan for frequent services in the city, and yet Transit is thinking of scaling back to meet some of these budget targets. I think that's the wrong priority. I think we need funding to maintain and increase transit service.